She only wanted to get home safely, with her baby asleep in her arms and hope in her heart. But what was supposed to be a peaceful flight turned into a nightmare at 30,000 feet. The whispers started first. Then came the stares. And before anyone could react, the flight attendant's hand came crashing across her face, right there, in front of everyone. The cabin fell silent. A mother humiliated, a child crying, and a plane full of witnesses too afraid to speak. She tried to hold back her tears, clutching her baby tighter, praying for it all to stop. But this wasn't just about one woman being disrespected, it was about the ugly truth still hiding behind polite smiles and corporate uniforms. What no one on that flight knew was who her husband really was. And when the truth came out, it would shake the entire airline to its core. Because sometimes, justice doesn't wait for the landing. Where are you watching this from right now? Tell me in the comments below. Let's see how far this story reaches. Before the headlines, before the outrage, before the moment that would make her name echo across social media, Amira Jackson was just a mother trying to balance it all. She worked long shifts as a nurse in Atlanta, caring for patients who often forgot her name but never her kindness. Every morning started the same, a quiet prayer, a bottle for baby Noah, and a tired smile in the mirror that said, "You've got this." Her husband, Marcus, was the kind of man who didn't brag about success. Calm, private, and grounded, he built a quiet empire in aviation, an airline group he ran with humility, never showing off his wealth or power. To Amira, he was just her best friend, the man who made her laugh after 12-hour shifts and held their baby so she could finally rest. That weekend, Amira planned something simple, a quick flight to surprise her mother for her birthday. It was supposed to be a small act of love, no bodyguards, no first-class treatment, no headlines. Just a young mom, traveling alone with her baby, proud and peaceful. The morning of the flight felt different, though. The air felt heavier, the world quieter. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was intuition. She kissed Marcus goodbye, promising to text when she landed. He smiled, unaware that in just a few hours, his wife would become the face of a story that would shake his company, and the country, to its core. At the airport, Amira moved through the terminal like any other passenger. The baby stroller squeaked slightly, her diaper bag tugging at her shoulder. People glanced, some smiled politely, and others looked past her like she was invisible. She was used to that. You learn, as a black woman, how to move through the world unseen, how to smile through discomfort and how to stay calm even when you're judged for simply existing. She didn't know that one of those polite smiles, one from a flight attendant in a crisp navy uniform, wasn't as friendly as it seemed. When Amira boarded, she had no idea she was stepping into a situation that would test her strength, her dignity, and the patience of every woman who had ever been told to stay quiet. Because this wasn't just another flight. It was the beginning of a storm that would expose the truth about power, prejudice, and how quickly kindness can turn to cruelty when someone decides you don't belong. The plane hummed softly as passengers settled into their seats. Babies cried, bags rustled overhead, and the usual chatter filled the cabin. Amira adjusted baby Noah in her arms, whispering to calm him as she found her seat near the middle of the plane. She was tired but content, just another mother, another flight, another day. Then came the first sign, small, almost invisible. The flight attendant, Lindsay, walked down the aisle, her smile practiced, her tone clipped. When she reached Amira, her eyes paused, not on the baby, but on the color of Amira's skin. A subtle narrowing, a half-second of judgment disguised as professionalism. Lindsay said sharply, "You'll need to move that bag. It doesn't belong there." Amira blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry," she began, already adjusting it. But before she could finish, Lindsay snatched the bag and shoved it into the overhead compartment with unnecessary force. The passengers nearby turned to look. Some frowned in discomfort, others quickly averted their gaze. Amira tried to brush it off. She'd learned long ago that sometimes, peace was better than pride. But as the flight continued, Lindsay kept finding reasons to single her out. "Your baby's crying too loud. You're blocking the aisle. You need to hold your ticket again, No, not like that. Each word was a tiny cut, sharp, deliberate, humiliating. The mother next to her offered a sympathetic glance, whispering, "Ignore her, honey." But Amira couldn't. Not anymore. She'd done everything right, smiled politely, followed instructions, stayed calm. Still, it wasn't enough. When the drink cart came by, Lindsay didn't even ask Amira if she wanted something. Instead, she skipped her row entirely. Amira hesitated, then softly spoke up. "Excuse me, could I please have some water?" The attendant froze, turned slowly, and in that moment, something shifted. Her smile disappeared. "Maybe you should focus on your child instead of making demands," she snapped. The words hit Amira like a slap, but then came the real one. As she reached for her diaper bag to get a bottle, Lindsay stepped closer, muttered something under her breath, and smacked the bottle right out of Amira's hand, spilling milk across her lap and the baby's blanket. The shock was instant. Gasps filled the air. A man across the aisle stood up, then hesitated when Lindsay barked, "Sit down, sir. This passenger is being aggressive." Aggressive? The word echoed in Amira's head, twisting her gut. She sat frozen, tears stinging her eyes as Noah began to wail. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but she knew what happened to women who raised their voices while black. Phones came out. Passengers whispered. Some recorded. Others stayed silent, afraid to intervene. The humiliation burned hotter than any slap. She could feel every gaze, every judgment. And then, something broke inside her. She lifted her chin, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm not the problem here," she said quietly. "You are." Lindsay's expression darkened. "That's it. You're being removed when we land." The captain's voice came over the intercom moments later, asking for calm. But the tension had already spread like wildfire. A man from the back shouted, "We saw what she did." Another added, "You can't treat her like that." Lindsay ignored them, walking briskly toward the cockpit, muttering about disruptive passengers. Amira sat motionless, heart pounding. She wanted to disappear, but she couldn't. Not this time. She looked down at Noah, whose small fingers clutched her sleeve, and something inside her steadied. She didn't know it yet, but the video recorded in that moment would soon explode online, turning this quiet, exhausted mother into a symbol of something much larger. As the plane descended, whispers filled the cabin. Someone handed Amira tissues. Another mouthed, "I'm so sorry." But when the wheels touched the ground, she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because waiting at the airport was someone who knew exactly how to handle injustice, someone who built an empire on dignity and respect. And as Marcus Jackson received the call that his wife had been assaulted mid-air, he didn't get angry. He got quiet. And when a man like Marcus goes quiet, the world is about to get very loud. The plane door opened with a metallic hiss, and the air outside felt heavy, thick with tension, shame, and disbelief. Amira held her baby close, eyes red but unbroken. She could hear murmurs from passengers as they disembarked, their voices trembling between anger and guilt. Some whispered, "She didn't do anything," while others just stared, too afraid to speak louder. At the gate, 2 security officers were already waiting. The flight attendant, Lindsay, marched ahead confidently, pointing back at Amira. "That's her," she said coldly. "Disruptive passenger. Needs to be detained for questioning." Amira froze. Detained? For what? Being assaulted? Her knees felt weak, but she stood tall, clutching Noah tighter as the officers approached. She wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, but then she saw the cameras. Dozens of phones, still recording, catching every second. Somewhere deep inside, her fear began to transform into something else, resolve. Before she could respond, another voice cut through the chaos. Calm. Commanding. Familiar. "Is there a problem here?" The crowd parted, and Marcus Jackson stepped forward, his presence quiet but powerful. He was dressed simply, dark suit, no entourage, no arrogance. But everyone felt the shift immediately. The officers hesitated. Lindsay's smug expression faltered. Amira's lips trembled. Marcus. He looked at her, then at Noah, then at the flight attendant. I'm told, he said slowly, that a member of your crew assaulted my wife. Lindsay's face drained of color. Your wife, she stammered. Marcus nodded, his voice steady. Yes. My wife. Amira Jackson. He paused, then added, and I own this airline. The words hung in the air, sharp and absolute. The crowd gasped. Phones tilted upward again, capturing the moment that would soon become viral history. If this moment gave you chills, hit that subscribe button for more real, powerful stories like this one. The officers stepped back instantly. Lindsay's composure crumbled as realization set in. Every insult, every cruel gesture, every ounce of prejudice, had just been witnessed by the very man whose signature kept her employed. I didn't know, she started, but Marcus raised a hand. That's exactly the problem, he said, his tone now cold steel. You didn't need to know. You just needed to treat her like a human being. The silence that followed was deafening. Amira could feel the entire terminal watching, waiting, and processing what had just unfolded. Lindsay tried to speak again, her words breaking apart. It wasn't like that, sir, she was. Marcus turned away, uninterested in excuses. His attention went back to his wife, his voice softening. Are you okay? Amira nodded weakly, tears falling, not from fear anymore, but from release. For the first time that day, she felt safe. The airline manager arrived moments later, panic etched across his face. Mr. Jackson, we had no idea. Marcus interrupted, his eyes never leaving Lindsay. Then maybe it's time your staff learnt what respect looks like. As security escorted Lindsay away, the cameras kept rolling. Passengers clapped softly, not for the power of wealth, but for the justice that, for once, didn't stay silent. And as Amira leaned into her husband's arms, the world began to take notice. Because that day, at one airport gate, something far bigger than an apology took flight, a reckoning that would echo far beyond the runway. In the days that followed, the story spread like wildfire. The video of the incident flooded social media, millions of views, countless shares, and headlines across every major network. The world watched as the truth unfolded, a mother humiliated in the sky, a system exposed in the light, and an industry forced to confront its own reflection. For Amira, it was never about revenge. It was about dignity. About the right to exist without fear of being judged, dismissed, or disrespected because of the color of her skin. She could have stayed silent, many before her had. But when the world came knocking, asking for her voice, she spoke. Calmly, firmly, truthfully. I didn't want to be a headline, she said in one interview, holding baby Noah in her arms. I just wanted to be treated like a person. Her words struck something deep in people. Because this wasn't just a story about a flight, it was a mirror reflecting how far we still have to go. The airline launched an investigation, suspending Lindsay and retraining its entire crew on racial bias and sensitivity. Public statements were issued, and apologies were made. But for Amira, true justice wasn't in the corporate damage control, it was in the conversations that followed. Across living rooms, classrooms, and boardrooms, people began asking uncomfortable questions. Why does this keep happening? Why are stories like this still so common? And how many more women like Amira have suffered quietly, without cameras to bear witness? Marcus stood by his wife through it all, his influence ensuring accountability, but his pride came not from power but from her strength. In every interview, he reminded the world that success means nothing if silence follows injustice. My wife reminded me, he said, that change doesn't come from owning something, it comes from standing for something. Months later, when Amira returned to flying again, something had changed. The stares were still there sometimes, the whispers too, but now, there was also recognition. Flight attendants treated her with care. Passengers smiled, offered help, and even thanked her for speaking up. Because her story wasn't just hers anymore, it belonged to every person who had been told to stay calm when disrespected, to let it go when humiliated, and to be the bigger person when wronged. And as the camera fades on Amira holding Noah, looking out the aeroplane window, her reflection glimmering against the clouds, the message becomes clear. Prejudice might still walk among us, but so does courage. And sometimes, it takes just one voice, one act of quiet defiance, to make the world listen. She didn't ask for fame. She didn't seek attention. But she stood her ground, and in doing so, she lifted others who couldn't. So the next time we see something wrong, something unjust, something cruel, will we stay seated? Or will we stand, speak, and choose to be the change we keep waiting for? Because racism doesn't just live in headlines, it lives in moments. And every moment gives us a choice. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were there that day?